what are your superpowers again? I'm rich.
We have a problem. There are so many things wrong with the original theatrical cut of Justice League, many of which have already been discussed at length all over the internet, so I won't make this video a diatribe on all the things needed to fix it, because that would take several hours. Also, unlike others who have already contributed their ideas to this topic, I'm not going to propose anything that would fundamentally alter the characters as they already exist in the DCEU, since that's not likely to happen in the Snyder Cut. That means no recasting, no changing the characters' personalities to make them more in line with the original or the overall plot itself. Regardless of my disagreements with the creative decisions made to alter some of these characters, it's a decision that can't be changed now. Instead, I'm going to discuss how, within the pre-existing narrative framework, Justice League can be improved in a way that won't of course fix the DCEU, but could at least make this one film a coherent, compelling piece of storytelling. Now, there are things about the film that I don't like, but which I can excuse. I can excuse the plot convenience that sees all of these characters unconvincingly bond over the course of only a few hours. I can excuse the overly edgy Aquaman and some of the shoddy CGI work. But the one thing that I cannot excuse, the one thing that the Snyder Cut must fix, is the film's treatment of Batman, specifically its inability to convincingly display his utility and identity within the DCEU. Batman is one of the most critically acclaimed and adored superheroes in comics history. His feats of strength, intelligence, perseverance, and endurance are so spectacular that they constantly belie the reality that he's really only a man among gods, aliens, and all manner of superhuman beings that comprise the DC universe. Batman's utility is one half of what makes him such an amazing superhero, and it's something that Justice League fundamentally did not understand. It's a bit of a running gag amongst MCU fans that the non-superpowered characters like Hawkeye and Black Widow sometimes seem out of place when their opponent is a mad titan, capable of besting Hulk in a boxing match. Back in 2018, memes were all over the internet poking fun at this idea in the run leading up to the release of Infinity War. And yet, Marvel has found a way to seamlessly integrate these characters into their respective teams in a way that doesn't disturb our suspension of disbelief. They found a way to make human characters coexist in a world of superheroes. On the other hand, no one watching Justice League can seriously be convinced that Batman has any place among his metahuman teammates.
Something is definitely bleeding.
What we got was a witless geriatric getting tossed around like a pinball for the vast majority of the film. Nothing about the Justice League's Batman resembles someone who is so formidable that Superman himself considers him the most dangerous man on Earth. But of all these egregious displays of uselessness, this one right here is the one that hits me hardest.
Mother, she's power, and power is the only law. You're all too weak to see the truth.
As Cyborg tries valiantly to separate the mother boxes while fending off Steppenwolf, there is a moment where it seems that all hope is lost. Wonder Woman is buried under rubble with Aquaman, Flash has already gone off eastward to save civilians, and Superman, of course, hasn't been seen since he left the League, lying defeated in Metropolis. Cyborg might be killed, and Steppenwolf would have nothing standing in the way of completing his mission. And Batman does nothing. When given the opportunity to do something heroic, he just stands there and watches. Is this the man who Superman considers the most dangerous man on Earth? A man so fearsome he can make the Grim Reaper jump?
Boo.
The Snyder Cut has to find a better way to showcase Batman's utility, and more so than just by displaying his immense wealth and arsenal of gadgets. And yes, the DCEU's Justice League is not the only comic movie adaptation to use Batman's lack of powers as a punchline. In the New 52-inspired DC Animated Universe film Justice League War, Green Lantern has a similar moment as the Flash had in Justice League, mocking the idea of Batman being a powerless lunatic in a batsuit.
You're not just some guy in a bat costume, are you? Are you freaking kidding me? What? Nobody asked you to prom, so now you dress as a bat and prowl around your parents' basement?
What's this do?
Huh?
No buttons. I assume it works off concentration.
How'd you do that?
You weren't concentrating.
But notice how the film immediately complements the joke with a demonstration of just how effective Batman can be, even without any powers. Throughout the film, he continues to be an asset, deducing, investigating, formulating strategy, and even saves Hal on various occasions throughout the film simply by staying level-headed and concentrated. In the sequel, Throne of Atlantis, it's Batman who ultimately wins the day against Aquaman's evil half-brother Orm by cleverly turning the Atlantean soldiers against their would-be king. This after the rest of the team had already exhausted their attempts at defeating him through sheer force alone. The DCEU films and other comics that feature Batman in team-up situations are able to demonstrate Batman's incredible utility in a way that makes him essential to the overall success of a mission, even when he's not doing anything traditionally heroic, like punching a bad guy or leaping a tall building. The Snyder Cut must do the same. This failure to properly demonstrate Batman's utility reveals much deeper systemic issues with respect to Batman's identity in the DCEU. The DCEU's Justice League takes its overall plot inspiration from the New 52 version of the Justice League's origin, as depicted in the DC Animated Universe film Justice League War. The overall narrative of the League's origin in the DCEU and DCEU are centered around the various individual superheroes forming a collective to stop an apocalyptic invasion of Earth, though the team rosters are slightly different. The most drastic change that the DCEU makes to the origin story, however, is the decision to have the League's formation be driven mostly by Batman. In War and almost every iteration of the Justice League since its inception, Batman, true to his loner persona, is hesitant to join up with any other heroes. His personal identity is marked by a principled distrust of anyone other than himself and his closest allies. As a result, Batman's position within the League has always been somewhat adversarial. In the initial run of Justice League in the Silver Age of comics, Batman and Superman weren't even featured in many of the team's adventures, sometimes not even appearing on the cover. In the Tower of Babel storyline, as depicted in the animated film Justice League Doom, Batman creates a contingency plan to defeat the Justice League in case they ever turn evil, which is ultimately used against them and nearly leads to their destruction, causing a rift that ultimately results in Batman leaving the team. Even the near destruction of Earth in the team's first DCEU outing in Justice League War was unable to make Batman fully integrate into the League in the sequel Throne of Atlantis.
What, the bats do good for us now?
It's Batman. He doesn't answer hails.
So, while it might seem unimportant, the decision to have Batman basically be the DCEU's version of Nick Fury actually marks a drastic change in Batman's identity. To justify such a major transformation in character, the Snyder Cut needs to properly establish the severity of the apocalypse threat from Bruce's perspective. One of the themes that I actually really liked in Batman v Superman was the idea of Batman's feeling of powerlessness in an increasingly superpowered world that he no longer recognizes. There are shades of this in the film's opening depicting the destruction of Metropolis during Superman and Zod's fight, and I actually think it did a decent job of establishing a universe in which Batman might feel slightly outgunned and thus perhaps more desperate. He's powerless on his own to stop the destruction of Wayne Tower in Metropolis, and it's this feeling of powerlessness that Alfred reckons is the source of Bruce's newfound anger. In a world in which Batman feels that he is outmatched physically, it is conceivable that he might seek help from strong allies to thwart an even stronger threat. The problem is that's not the world that the theatrical cut of Justice League has presented. In BVS, Batman says to Wonder Woman that they need to gather other superheroes because he has a feeling they'll need them. Other than the dream sequence in BVS, which was specifically related to the threat of an evil Superman, Justice League lacks the necessary visual evidence from Batman's perspective that would demonstrate the magnitude of the otherworldly threats Earth faces. In my opinion, a series of kidnappings and sightings of unidentified flying objects is not nearly enough. All of the real action in Justice League showing the power and brutality of Steppenwolf and his army takes place in Themyscira and Atlantis, far away from Gotham. In the same way that Batman's decision to kill Superman in BVS was a direct response to the destruction of Metropolis, which he witnessed, the Snyder Cut needs to focus specifically on Batman's inability to deal with the apocalypse threat on his own. This has to be a threat so severe that even the infamous Batman is willing to play well with others.
I am Jean Jones.
Don't take it personally, Sean. He doesn't trust anyone.
The Snyder Cut should also utilize Batman's secret identity with more care than the original theatrical cut, as it could be a very effective means of expressing the overwhelming nature of the threat and the lengths Batman is willing to go to confront it. I think it was a completely wasted opportunity to have Bruce nonchalantly throw away his secret identity in the theatrical cut, when in other stories it's been used so effectively as a tool that Batman uses to prove his sincerity to his closest allies. In Justice League War, Superman is incapacitated by an Omega Beam from Darkseid and taken back to Apocalypse. Green Lantern tries to pursue, but his arm is broken. Batman knows Hal will be no help to Superman on his own, and there is still a battle to fight on the ground with the rest of the team. Someone has to go. To convince Hal to remain on Earth with the others, Bruce removes his cape and cowl and bares himself to Hal.
You're gonna die.
Then I die.
What are you trying to prove?
I'm not trying to prove anything, you phenomenal douchebag. Don't act like you know me. You don't.
We're just somewhat alike.
We are nothing alike.
We're fighting alongside an alien, an Amazon, a human lightning bolt, a cyborg, and a speedster. Far as I can tell, Hal, you and I are the only normal people here.
I never told you my name.
Saw it on your flight suit.
You're pretty south of normal, Spooky. You know that, right?
My name is Bruce Wayne. When I was 10, my parents were murdered in front of my eyes. I've spent my life training to fight the same sort of criminals that took them from me. But this is different. This isn't about me.
You're telling me this why?
This is bigger than I am, and it's bigger than you are. Get out of your own way. Focus on what's important here.
Imagine a moment like this in the Snyder Cut. If, for example, instead of being used for a throwaway gag about how hot Wonder Woman is, Diana's lasso of truth is used by Batman to demonstrate his sincerity for cooperation. What if instead of Aquaman, Batman grabs the lasso and uses it to have a heartfelt exchange with the team, where perhaps he divulges his secret identity or something even more personal, like the loss of Robin? The death of Robin would be a perfect mechanism for furthering the theme of powerlessness that was brought forth in BVS. It is an event that is one of the most influential moments in shaping Batman's character across his various stories, yet it's completely unexplored in either BVS or Justice League, save for a small cameo. Although Dick Grayson is the dead Robin in the DCEU's continuity, in the comics it's Batman's second apprentice, a troubled teen named Jason Todd, who was brutally murdered by the Joker during a mission gone wrong. This traumatic event subsequently haunted the Dark Knight for some time afterward. In Detective Comics number 606, for example, Clayface impersonates the dead Jason Todd to intimidate Batman, and he succeeds in momentarily freezing the caped crusader long enough to land a blow. It's a brief moment of emotional vulnerability which, although Batman quickly overcomes it, is emblematic of just how debilitating that sense of failure was on his psyche. In other Batman stories, the death of Jason Todd was even more impactful. In Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, for example, it's implied that the loss of Jason Todd was, along with growing anti-superhero sentiment, the primary motivation for Bruce's retirement.
Talked to Dick lately?
You know I haven't.
Shame you didn't keep up with him. Could have been a shoulder to lean on. After what happened with Jason.
Let's call it a night, Jim.
In lieu of this, or even in addition, I think there's actually an interesting opportunity to explore the emotional weight of Robin's death if the Snyder Cut focuses more closely on the relationship between, of all people, Bruce and Barry. Barry, being the upstart newbie, is someone that a veteran like Bruce, who has already lost a young soldier, might feel an obligation to mentor and protect. While I wasn't a fan of how the relationship affected, in my opinion, negatively the characterization of Spider-Man, the relationship between Tony and Peter in the MCU was actually rather effective at transforming Tony from a selfish, narcissistic rich guy to a caring, team-oriented paternal figure. It doesn't have to be overdone, but a few exchanges of dialogue between Bruce and Barry demonstrating Bruce's concern for the young hero's well-being could emphasize his sense of guilt over Robin's death. This could very well provide exactly the context needed to justify transforming the traditionally individualistic Batman into a team player and provide an added layer of emotional maturity to the DCEU's older interpretation of the character. If I could write Superman entirely out of this film, honestly I would. I think having him come in last minute to defeat Steppenwolf robs Batman of a much-needed character moment. We already know Superman is strong, so his defeat of Steppenwolf does nothing to add value to our appreciation or understanding of his character. Remember that moment in the first Avengers movie, where Tony Stark nearly sacrifices himself to save the city from nuclear destruction? The MCU could have had Thor or Hulk toss the nuke into the stratosphere, but it's Tony Stark, the mere mortal, who personally delivers the warhead to the armies of Thanos, making the conclusion of his arc in Endgame so much more impactful. So when Cyborg is on the brink of being destroyed by Steppenwolf, I'd like to see Batman have his Avengers moment. Not just because Batman has more utility to the Justice League than just being rich, but because it's just not in Batman's identity, no matter what version of him exists, to do nothing in that moment. As Ra's al Ghul put it in Batman Begins, it's the will that's important. The will to act despite his powerlessness. If the Snyder Cut is just an excuse to add 2 hours of extra characters, cameos, and exposition to an already bloated film without improving the core narrative infrastructure that has made DC's comics so beloved, then I will be extremely disappointed. It will just be another entry in a crowded field of popcorn action hero blockbusters, and that would really be a shame. Stories, especially ones that feature Batman, should be an opportunity to convey themes, ideas, and beliefs that inform our understanding of ourselves and our world. So I hope Zack Snyder can figure out a way to use Batman and say something new, something interesting, something bold that we've never seen before. Anything. Just say something. Thanks for watching.